All right, welcome to another episode of First Five, where we discuss the first five of something. Of course, it's business related because I am your host, Johnny B2B, as my partner likes to call me, Englezos, and that means we are going to be talking about a first five something in relation to business performance and getting somewhere in business, especially when you're running a B2B business. Now, today I'm joined by Claire Chandler. Why? Well, Claire is the founder and president of Talonboost. They're a business advisory firm, and she's also an Amazon bestseller. But more importantly, our topic today is about what you need to do and get right over your first 5 years. Why? Because here's the reality. Most businesses never make it to 10. Half fail at 5, most don't make it to 10, and by 15, you look at the landscape and pretty much everyone is gone. But Claire's been doing this consistently for at least 12 years. And what that means is she's more than qualified to tell us what the hell we need to do to stay alive for the first 5. And so that's why I've got Claire with me today. Claire, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so great to be here, and it's so great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've known Claire now for quite some time, and you've been a client, and you're a friend. You're a Giants fan, I'm a Jets fan, which means we also butt heads and send nasty emails throughout the seasons. So ultimately today, we're here to talk about these first 5 years, which are precarious for most business owners. As I just said, half fail at the 5 year point, and by 10, you look at the landscape and it's completely changed. Claire, why do you think most businesses fail within the first 5 years? What is it that's getting them down?
So I think there's so many things that trip us up as business owners and entrepreneurs. And let me just first say that there is so much that we have in common as business owners, right? So by nature, we business owners, we entrepreneurs are absolute control freaks. And there's a reason that the corporate grind, the hamster wheel, the 9 to 5, the traditional type of ways of making a living just don't speak to us. And you talk to your friends, your family. I know for me, like I've been doing this now, as you said, for this is our 12th year in business, and people still just don't understand what it is I do. They're like, "Oh, it must be nice that you just sort of stay home and you do what you want." And it's like, no, I actually have a thriving business. I've been doing this for a while. I happen to have a home base, but they don't quite get it, right? It's not for everybody. Everybody sort of has different myths about the lifestyle, but I do think that one of the reasons that so many businesses fail and become that statistic is that while we are control freaks, we don't all necessarily understand what it actually takes to thrive as a business owner, not just to jump from the corporate hamster wheel to trying to do everything yourself. And there is this happy medium I'll talk a lot about, sort of the sweet spot that you have to find. And it's more than just finding your rhythm, and it's more than just finding a different routine. It is truly about finding that magic middle between what you enjoy doing, what you're good at doing, and what someone will pay you for in value, and you can build a business around. And I think so many business owners and entrepreneurs get stuck in their own heads. They get stuck around the mythology of what business ownership and entrepreneurship really are and really take. And they don't necessarily reach out, ask for help, look for guidance, listen to the critics, look at alternative perspectives, and do what it takes to bulletproof their road towards success.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of business owners I've met, especially when they're getting to that sort of 3 years, 4 years, and the numbers haven't been where they expect it to be. So everyone, I think, gets into business because they see this idea of, they've got this idea of success. I'm going to make $500,000 and I'm going to do it in 3 years, and 3 years is long enough away. The reality is it's never that easy, and it's kind of like climbing Mount Everest. You got to hike, 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 and then you stop somewhere, and then you got to go down a bit, and you got to go back up again. Most of the business owners that I meet at 3 years are just tired. They're overwhelmed and they're tired. And for 3 years, 4 years, maybe even up to 5 years, they've said to themselves they can do it on their own because they're an entrepreneurial type, right? So of course we can do everything on our own. Of course we can build something even if someone else can help us build it and do it faster and probably cheaper than our own hourly rate. We build things and that's great. That's to be commended. But business owners run out of gas really quickly. And when you run out of gas, you lose passion. And when you lose passion, it's easy just to kind of give up. But what I know is that, delayed gratification is kind of what we need, but not everyone wants that, right? Would you agree?
100%. And I'm kind of sitting here smirking about the 3 year comment because I do think that there's something that happens every 3 years in our careers. It was definitely true for me. Before I went out onto the entrepreneurial unknown, I spent about 20 years in corporate America, on the hamster wheel, on the executive track, doing all the things that I was conditioned through schooling to think that employment was all about. And I found that every 3 years or so, I started to get bored. I started to get complacent, and I started to get into such a groove that it was like mindless, that I was just sort of going through the motions. And that was always a signal to me, because I do not like being bored, and I don't like going into a job or into a situation where I'm just phoning it in. And so I think as humans, we're kind of wired. There is that survival instinct that every so often, we kind of go through cycles. If we get complacent, our early ancestors, it's like if we took our foot off the gas, we like got, mowed over, we got eaten by a dinosaur, I don't know what, but like it wasn't good, right?
Yeah.
To kind of slow down and coast. And so I know for me, like that was true in my corporate career, that every 3 years or so, I made a job change, even if it was in the same company. And I think as business owners, as they approach year 3, if they are fortunate enough, because let's face it, a lot of those early years are not about, exactly all the moves to make and all the right things to do. A lot of it is flat out luck.
Yeah.
And as we approach that kind of 3 year mark, we start to figure out what that sweet spot does look like for us. And then we're at a crossroads, because then there's sort of this decision to make around that 2.5, 3 year, 4 year mark to say, am I going to pivot, or am I going to just keep going through doing exactly what I'm doing now? Because now I feel like I got it down. And there's a fear factor to that, right? To pivoting, because if I let go of what I've been doing so well and I'm sort of cranking and I'm doing things on autopilot, am I going to blow the whole thing up? That's typically around the time that you start to get a bigger client that really tests your mettle. It's typically around the time you start to either hire your very first employee, or you expand your team, or maybe you look for outside funding. So around that pivot point is really, to me, in my experience, the first big decision point that can threaten to make or break your business. But it really does take, it takes some intestinal fortitude as a business owner and as an entrepreneur to pivot, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really, I don't have a green thumb. My mom like loves working in the garden. I never picked up that skill, but I know enough that if you really want your plants and your trees and your shrubs to be hardy, you've got to prune them from time to time. You've got to pinch off the dead, the dead leaves, the dead branches, the dead petals, so that it can grow, it can thrive, it can nourish. It's the same thing in a business. You have to know when to pivot, what to let go of, and what to have somebody else help you out with.
Yeah, I think you're so bang on with that point. Because here's the thing, like if I look at my own business and now I've been in business, since 2010. So what are we talking about here? I'm really bad at maths, but is that like 15?
You're going on 15 years, my friend.
I'm going on to 15 years. That's really cool. Well, that's cool to know. But if I look at how my business has changed over the 15 years, I think half the reason why I've stood and I'm still here today is just because I've been open to change, right? And it's so funny because as business owners, I think sometimes we think we're cutting edge, and we think that we're always ready to get into the next thing, and we know we're hard workers, but sometimes when you're really passionate about something, it's hard when the advice is, I think you got to switch things around, because as you said, the intestinal fortitude, right? That gut feeling, it's gut wrenching. No one wants to be told that their idea kind of sucks. No one wants to be told that, yeah, you've thrown 3 years at this thing and it's probably not going to scale, right? But if you look at the businesses if you look at the billion-dollar businesses that stand today, look at how they evolve. That's the thing that I've always looked at is, where did they start and where did they end up? Amazon started because they wanted to sell more books, and they still sell lots of books, right? But if you look at what most people buy off Amazon nowadays, it's probably not books. If you look at Apple, Apple started with a computer, and the thing that people buy most is a phone, right? You look at all these huge businesses and you see how they've changed. Microsoft only ever did software, but you buy a Surface Pro, right? So the big businesses are open to change, and it's because they've been open to change that they've kind of stood the test of time. But we've got to take that same example and ask ourselves as a small business, because we all are, right? what the hell do we need to change to be able to stand the test of time, especially now with the changes in technology? AI is everywhere, right? And I don't want to waffle on about AI in this podcast, but AI is everywhere, and AI is going to change a lot of things, especially for people in our space. We're both in the consulting, education, and training space, right? We help other business owners absolutely kick ass and do cool things. Technology is going to change our own business, right? And so if we want to sit here and grumble about the fact that AI is around and avoid it like the plague and just try and convince people you don't need AI, you just need my brain, we're not going to get anywhere. In 3 years, we're going to be obsolete, right? So being open to change has been one of the most important factors that I've seen, especially when a client comes to me and they're struggling. You know, it's like, well, hey, we've probably got to look at this business model a little bit, look at the way you're doing things, and ask yourself why you're hitting these ceilings that are far lower than where you should be. I mean, that's been my biggest thing. How do you feel about that?
I absolutely agree. And in fact, that's how you and I first connected and started to work together, because I was at that one of those inflection points in my business. So it wasn't year three when you and I first
Mm-hmm.
got to working together, but it was during one of those next pivots where again, you kind of come to these crossroads and these sort of decision points. And for me, it was, I can continue to do what I do and do it as a solopreneur and literally customize a solution for every single client that comes to my door and reinvent the wheel every time and convince myself that that's the way to keep it fresh and that's the way to keep myself motivated because I'm creating, right? And after a while, your ability to deliver in that mode is finite. And so that was the inflection point for me. It was like, am I going to just continue to be a solopreneur who takes on one client at a time, one problem at a time, one solution at a time?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I going to finally lean into an expert like yourself and say, how do I standardize the best components of what I do so that while it may not be as motivating to me because it's sort of like repeated, it's scalable and it's brand new to that next client. And if I do it in such a way where I bundle and standardize and almost templatize the best of my product, then I bulletproof that. I make it even better. I make it stand out in the market as a differentiator. And it is so new and fresh for that next client that that's what infuses the energy in me to keep delivering that in an energized way.
Yeah, I love it. I think you absolutely nailed it. So let's come back to this idea of the first 5 years. We want to teach people not to fail, right? And I'm sure you've got some, I don't know, tricks up your sleeve, some ideas in your bag. Claire, I want you to go through some of these ideas. For anyone listening who might be stuck at that 3, 4, or 5 year point and they're worried, I mean, what should they do? How can we get them past 5 years and get them to wherever they want to get to?
Yeah, so as I was sort of reflecting on all of my own life lessons and being in business now, going on 12 years as a business owner, I kind of struck upon this sort of this sense of directionality. And so there's a couple of things that I want to just sort of impart, and then we can unpack, in whatever direction you want. But the first one is that you have to build your business from the inside out. One of the things that I, in hindsight, wish I had done sooner was make more of an investment in myself first and not just go directly to what are the investments that are going to get me clients and build out my business. It is really important as small business owners, as solopreneurs who aspire to be bigger entrepreneurs, that we get really dialed in on, what it is as our core, not just our core offer, but even before that, understanding what our core beliefs are. I convinced myself in those first couple of years that I didn't have the disposable income to invest in a coach, to invest in a business mentor, to outsource certain parts of my business, because anything that I didn't do myself meant I had to spend money for somebody else to do it for me. And I know that your audience is sitting there and nodding vigorously and going, that's totally me. Because it is, because again, we're control freaks, right? And so one of the things that it took me until about year three to really get my brain around was, if I'm truly going to grow this business and have it be sustainable and have it be something that I can do for the rest of my life, I have to invest in myself. I have to invest in a coach. And it was the best investment I ever made. It's funny. There was something you said at the top of this conversation that harkened me back to one of my earlier business coaches. And I called him at one point in between like our regular coaching calls, and I said, I need you to talk me off the ledge, because I'm approaching the end of my financial year, and I'm not at the revenue target that I had set for myself. And you had made a reference to that earlier in this conversation, and I know we all do, right? Because that's the scorecard. The scorecard is the revenue target. And I was having a little bit of a freak out moment. And of course, then it was feeding my imposter syndrome that maybe I'm not really cut out to be a business owner, to be a solopreneur, to think I am worthy of more, right? And so my coach, very calmly, because he's sort of the calm in my storm and the clarity in my forest, said, "You're looking at your scorecard all wrong." He said, "The financial metric, of course, is important, because if you don't make enough money that outpaces your expenses, then you're going to go out of business. And we know a lot of businesses do. You already shared the really scary statistics. But that is not the only measure of success." He said, "I want you to look back at this entire year, at how much you have grown and the significant pivots that you did in your business to get more dialed in on of all the things you could do as far as client solutions, the ones that you really feel so passionate about. Your clients can't help but sign up to work with you." And he said, "I also want you to think about how much more time and flexibility and freedom you had to go spend quality time with your husband, to go golfing with your dad, to go take your mom to her spa treatments, together. It's not like she just went to a spa. That sounded really bad. But, spending quality time with the people who matter to you." And in my corporate days, I had time for none of that. I had time for none of that. And so when he kind of got my mind right, I never forgot that. And it's something that I impart on business owners and entrepreneurs and corporate executives who lose sight of what the score is really all about, and that the revenue or the financial metric is just one of the metrics. It's not the totality of what your worth is. And so all of that to say, that first directional tip I have is, we've got to grow from the inside out. We've got to build that business from the inside, do the deep reflection work, take on a coach, invest in one to the level that you are able to invest, right? I mean, don't blow all your savings and mortgage your house and all of that. But there is the right coach for you at the right time in your evolution. And the universe is going to open you up to that. And I can't believe I just said that, because in the beginning of this journey, I was not woo at all. But I have come to believe that when you say like your intentions out into the world, they have a funny way of coming into your path. And if you don't take advantage of those early days when it is just you and the voices in your head, to do that internal work, to say, what do I really believe, and what's the impact I want to make on the world? And how do I do that in a way that's sustainable? And how do I do that in a way that lights me up and makes the people who matter to me proud? If you don't do that, then you're going to just chase the money. And it's fine if all you ever want to be is a soulless rich person. That's great. Power to you, right? But if you really want to have a deep, meaningful journey while you're walking the earth, then you got to go after more than just the green.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will say, like, I had the wrong mindset for the first couple of years that I was in business. Funny story, well, not a funny story. I got into business because I thought I was going to be a rock star at the age of 14. So you asked me at 14, you can kind of see the guitars in the background. I was going to be a rock star. That's what I was going to do. By the time I was 19, I was going to release 6 albums, and I'll be playing Madison Square Garden. Sold out 2 nights in a row, right? That obviously didn't happen. But because of that, I wasn't very good at school. So then I actually thought I was going to be a bricklayer, because my dad's a bricklayer, my uncle's a bricklayer, my grandfather's a bricklayer. So I was like, well, I suppose that's what I'm going to do. I failed at school. My dad threw me a hard hat and a trowel and said, "Son, you're laying bricks." Like, that's it, man. That's your life. But I bring this up because obviously I was an apprentice and I wasn't making a lot of money, and I was really extremely unhappy. And I was like, no, man, I'm now like 19, I'm 20. I want to make lots of money. I want to buy a house and buy a nice car, and I want to go overseas lots and all this type of stuff. That's why I started my first business, and that's actually why I started. Initially, I thought I was going to be a jingle writer and live like Charlie Sheen did in Two and a Half Men. That obviously didn't happen. So then I decided, well, that's kind of like marketing. Let me get into marketing. So I was sold on this idea that I would be totally time free, and I would just make tons of money. And I would just, impress everyone at my 10-year high school reunion because they all knew me as the flunk. Now, obviously, that didn't happen, and that's probably a good thing because that's not what business is about. And it took me about 3 or 4 years to really understand that despite the fact that I was never meeting these lofty financial targets that I had set, which really, by the way, had basis from nowhere. Like I had no grounds to feel or think a certain way. I was making, 13 bucks an hour as a bricklayer's apprentice. You know what I mean? And I'm like trying to make, I'm trying to make $500,000 in my third year. And it's like, maybe that's just not the case. But really what I learned over those 3 years was I was starting to build myself, at the very least, a life that meant more than just slogging away at work. And it took me 3 or 4 years to work that out. To work out that, wow, this actually, there's some other things here that I'm getting as intangible benefits that probably mean more than the money. And so outside of needing to be comfortable enough to put food on my table, to take care of my wife and my two daughters, to be able to take some trips away and occasionally do some cool stuff for my mum and dad. Like if I'm doing that, but I'm building this great business and this great brand and this great place that people love to work at, I'm ticking boxes that are far more important than how big is John's salary, you know. And but it took me a while to work that out. Trust me.
Well, and
And
so it's funny though
still trying
because
to work it out.
you said it was around 3 years, right? And it's so interesting how that 3 year arc keeps coming around. I think there is certainly something to that. Um, you what you also said, which I think is really really important for your audience to hear again, is you don't know where that revenue goal came from. It came out of nowhere, and I would actually argue it came out of one of the dangers and one of the pitfalls that we business owners fall prey to, which is comparison. I know that my first couple of years, I set revenue targets that were not based on a business plan. They were not based on any sort of critical evaluation of previous year and backlog and clients and forecasting, any of that nonsense. It was based on what I saw other business owners and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs saying that they were making in idle conversation, and me saying they're outpacing me. What is wrong with me that I'm not doing that? I must not be working hard enough. I must not be bringing enough value. And again, it feeds all that imposter syndrome. So for me, the early years, and I think most business owners fall prey to this, we set revenue targets based on a comparison to other people. Um, and comparison is good, except that it really should be comparison to your younger self, to your previous year's state of mind, to what you prioritized then. My husband, as you know, is a military veteran, and he's got a whiteboard in the kitchen, and it says the only easy day was yesterday. And so for him, he doesn't compare himself to other corporate executives, or now he's my business partner. He doesn't compare himself to what other entrepreneurs are bringing to the table. He compares his level of effort and output to what he did yesterday, and it drives him. And so I think the comparison risk is real, and it comes around to when I said we need to invest sooner in ourselves than just jumping into let's build out a bigger business. That also includes finding mentors that you can learn from, who have tripped over some of the landmines that you are inevitably going to come across, and that you can learn your better way around. But the caveat to that is learn from mentors, but don't try to copy them. I think too many business owners make the mistake, again, of comparing themselves to some sort of successful business guru or, seasoned entrepreneur or
So
business
true.
owner, right? And say, if I just do those same things and say those same things and go to those same meetings and use the same script, I will have the same success. And it's not a template. They're a guide that are going to help you get out of your own head and get out of your own way. But you have to be authentic. You have to tap. That's why I keep saying, like, you have to go from the inside out. You have to build your business understanding and getting really dialed into who you are. And I think so many people, especially if they've spent a lot of time in corporate, who you really are and what you really believe and what you truly value and what you really want to get out of this journey we call life is buried under layers and layers and miles of corporate crap because we are assigned by other people what our worth is, because we're given a salary, we're given a job description, we're told what our incentives are, we're told what our benefits package is, and we're taught not to question that. And as business owners, we have to throw all that out and we have to build it from scratch. And we can't do that by just copying somebody else's journey because it was never meant to be yours.
True. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, this is going to work really well into the next point that I'd like to talk about, at least really briefly, and that is most entrepreneurs don't ask for help. And guess what? Sometimes in your first 5 years, in fact, almost in every single case, it's okay to ask for help. In fact,
Totally.
I encourage it. It's crazy how many business owners I talk to say, I can't afford the help, but they're also simultaneously paying off an $80,000 BMW, right?
Right.
What's
Because
more
they're
important?
comparing themselves to a
Exactly.
lifestyle that isn't actually real.
Nailed it. Yeah, absolutely nailed it, right? So people are happy to do this time and time again. They're happy to spend money on things like that, these vanity items that make them feel good for a second, right? But the underlying story is you may not even, your business might even not even last long enough to pay off the lease, right? Like, imagine that. Imagine taking out a 5-year car lease, but your business lasts 4 years. Wouldn't that suck? How are you going to pay it off? But for most business owners, like they're doing that. So I've got plenty of people who are running, businesses at a moderate size who will say to me, "Yeah, look, I can't invest, can't make it happen. I haven't got the profit to invest into it. We're barely breaking even." And it's like, well, look at your freaking expenses. And ask yourself what's more important. So I think there's probably 2 points there that I've just brought up. One is it's okay to ask for help. Two is, and I'm going to sound really brash when I say this, stop spending money on dumb shit, because there are plenty of small business owners that are spending money on silly things. One thing I've had to sometimes tell these business owners as well is it's okay to shrink to greatness. You know, Sometimes you got to look at the balance sheet and you got to look at the profit and loss and say, maybe I need to make cuts so I can get to my next level. Maybe I need to reduce my service offerings and the 17 different things I'm doing, which are confusing me, my team, and my clients, and reduce that list to try and get to where I need to get to. Maybe I need to siphon down my attention, who I'm spending time with, to get to where I need to get to, right? This idea of shrinking to greatness, which I did rip off from Jim Collins, so I'm not going to pretend that that's my thing. But that's a big theme, and I've had to do that twice in the business. Twice we've had to fire everyone and go back to square one, right? Which sucks. It's painful. But then you kind of get to where you need to get to, and they're never aggressive firings, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you just have to do things to stay alive,
Yep.
right?
You
It's just
have
the
to
nature of business.
prune to grow, right? If you think of
I
that
love it.
planting analogy, you have to cut back what is actually stunting your growth and nurture what's working. Nurture the strong roots and branches and all of that. And it kind of comes back to this, this sort of comparison pitfall. One of the things you said when you were sharing the statistic about, by year 5, about half of new businesses fail. And by year 10, a lot of them are gone. And by year 15, most of your competitors are gone if you've survived that long. Part of the reason a lot of the competitors start to drop off, if business owners do the right things up front and they make those critical reassessments and say, I'm not going to have the flashy car if this is a year where I'm pivoting, which means I'm not going to bring in as much revenue. One of the reasons that as a business goes forward and survives year over year is competition doesn't necessarily all disappear, but they become less relevant. And what I mean by that is, so this is sort of like the next piece of the direction, right? So first I said, build your business from the inside out. The second one is to go wide before you go deep. In my early days as a business owner, I didn't know what my unique proposition was going to be. I didn't know what my niche was going to be all about. I didn't know what my brand was going to be other than an amplification of my personality. And so in the beginning, what I did first was I didn't just dismiss potential opportunities out of hand because I had this sort of singular vision about what I was going to be all about. It took me 2, maybe 3 years, honestly, to figure that out. In fact, I left corporate in 2011. I didn't start my company until 2013. So I took 2 solid years to really sort of weed through the top of that very wide funnel and look at all the opportunities for different work that I knew I could do, that I could potentially enjoy doing with people who would pay me to do it. And so I said yes to more opportunities than I said no to in the beginning, because with every invoice I sent out to a client, which was like a really thrilling thing for me after 20 years of just drawing a salary. The more I did that, the more I started to realize what that center, what that sweet spot really was. And now I'm at a point where I am in that sweet spot where I do work that I love. I am in a position where I can curate who I get to work with. So I have a strict no asshole policy. Like, I will not work with you if you're a toxic narcissist, if you're nasty
Nailed
to
it.
your employees, if you're a jackass to your spouse. Like, I won't do it. I want to work with people that I wouldn't mind inviting over for the holidays. I want ones that I can send a funny meme to on Facebook or on a text, and they don't go, "What the hell are you doing?" Those are my people.
Yeah.
And do it in such a way that, they appreciate me, I appreciate them. We do amazing work together. And like, oh yeah, by the way, they pay me for it. But it's sort of like, that's a secondary thing. It's not, if you pay my invoice, I'll do the work for you. Now it's like, I just want to do the work. I want to do work that lights me up, that I know is going to make a difference in your business. And we're going to agree to an energy exchange in the form of currency that we can both feel good about. And then we're going to get that out of the way so it's not a distraction. Like, that's the sweet spot. And if you can find that sweet spot in your own business, where you filter out the flash and the lifestyle and the things that you're comparing yourself because the guy down the street is also a business owner and he started a month after you and he's got a bigger car, screw all that. It doesn't matter. Because the more you stay in your sweet spot, the less your competitors can compare themselves to you. Because the clients who are your true ideal clients are the ones that gravitate toward you, because sure, they can get what you offer from the next guy down the road, but are they going to enjoy the experience as uniquely as they do with you? That's the holy grail.
Yeah, you nailed it. And here's the other thing I like to bring up when anyone talks about this. Population in the States is what, 350 million? Has it reached 350 million yet?
Yeah, we're a little bit over that, yeah.
You're a little bit over 350 million, right? The average consultant, trainer, agency owner, the people that are in my audience, how many clients they really need in any given year? Maybe acquire another 5, another 10, another 15. Your people are out there because guess what? There's 350 million people there. And there's also a lot of people there that are not going to be your people, and that's okay. So I love this idea of finding your sweet spot, because the reason most people don't try and find their sweet spot or don't sit in their sweet spot is scarcity mindset. If I don't take this job, if I don't take this client, when's the next one coming? I don't know when it's going to come. You've got to leave that shit on the table and push it away, right? Because the reality is there are 350 million Americans out there, right? There are only 25 million Australians, but there are 350 Americans, and even in 25 million Australians, can I not find the small subset that absolutely align with where I want to be and what I'm trying to achieve and what they want to achieve, and that synchronicity that needs to exist for us to have a good business relationship? Because I can't get the result for someone who just I can't spend the time with, right? And they're not going to enjoy or do any of the work if they don't vibe with me either. And so this idea of the sweet spot, on the flip side, people think, and they trick themselves into thinking they have to take everything. And maybe like in your first year, take everything while you work out what the hell it is that you want to do, right? Because the other side of that is be open to your offer having to change. Most of the time when I speak to a business at this 3 to 5 year point, we are changing their offers and we're testing different things because maybe we haven't worked out exactly what works. But, once you've found your sweet spot, as you said, be comfortable in sitting inside of it. Be comfortable saying no to deals that you should say no to, because number one, you're going to open yourself up to taking on more of the good work. Number two, that's going to make you more happy. But number three, it's out there. There are 350 million potential candidates, right? If you need to find 5, statistics are on your side by a mile.
Absolutely.
An absolute
Absolutely.
mile.
Which is also why in the early days you want to start wide and then go deep, because I also have found that if you niche too early, you actually pigeonhole yourself, and then you become sort of either known as a one-trick pony, or you become stagnant because that's all you ever are known for, and you're going to resent yourself in hindsight if you niche too soon, and if you pick the wrong one. So I think that's important too. The other thing, because I really want to double click on your talk about a scarcity mindset. And you talk about this all the time. And it is really important that people understand not to show up with clients or with employees as they go to hire their first employee. And we'll talk about that too, from a place of neediness. I talk to people all the time. I had a guy in my network approach me one time, and he said he had this, he wanted to come together and collaborate and pitch this new way of, this new sort of solution offering. And it would only work if we combined forces, and he had strategic partners and whatever. And it sounded like a good concept until he said, and I think the first 3 clients should get this offer for free. And I said, hell no. I said, we can talk about, sort of a bare bones pricing for a first iteration of this offer, but do not devalue yourself and your worth in front of clients by offering them something for free. If it's a course that you've already done, with other people, or it's sort of like a, how do you always refer to it? Sort of a low ticket or
let's
low
take it
value,
off.
right?
Yeah.
Fine. But if it's something that's going to require more than 5 hours of your time to design or deliver or anything else, never give it away for free. A discovery call, fine. You want to sit, with them on site and do a 2-hour deep dive into their, diagnose their issues? Cool. Do not give away your secret sauce for free, because the whales, the big clients that are going to become your loyal, I have clients that have been with me from the very beginning. They are not going to think of you as their unique partner in their business journey if you give away the candy.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's this real accidental slave driver mentality that sometimes exists in a business relationship. And you're going to talk about the first hire in a second, and it also happens with employers and employees, right? Which we've got to try and eliminate. But certainly, like I've found, it's not a problem to over deliver on your promise. In fact, we should always under promise and over deliver. Like that's a fundamental way that you keep clients forever and make them extremely happy and extremely excited. But you don't want to, for lack of a better term, pimp yourself out in that way where you're not getting any value in return, right? Because half the reason that scarcity mindset exists is we don't value ourselves highly enough. And a lot of the time, I when I'm consulting with, especially solo entrepreneurs who haven't got a sounding board for this stuff, or like coaches and consultants that are running on their own, the number one complaint is I don't get paid enough, but then they constantly devalue themselves when they're producing their own offers. And it's like, well, who set the benchmark for you not getting paid enough? It's probably you. If I tell everyone that I am a certain thing, I am a certain type of person, they're going to start to believe it, right? So if I price myself a certain way and I'm constantly telling people that my price is down here, I'm constantly playing a race to the bottom, or I'm giving away way too much for free, right? I do agree with you. There's a limit to that, right? There's some things that we can give away for free that are beneficial. But we talk about appointments with purpose. That's sitting down with someone and actually helping them with something, because you'll build the trust and you can probably sell the next step really easily. But if you constantly value yourself down here, then guess what? That's the ceiling that you've set. It's self-imposed. You got to break past
100%.
that. No one's going to do it. No one's going to willfully say, "Hey, Claire, I'd rather pay you 50% more." Is that cool? It's just
Right.
not going to fucking happen.
That's right.
Anyway, so
Well,
back to your
and
point.
when you treat yourself like a commodity, right? I know that your bread and butter is helping people to package what they uniquely do in such a way that it becomes, a no-brainer for the right client to sort of, sign on the dotted line and for them to scale. And it's important to be able to package things up in a consistent way, because your quality goes up if you standardize, it's all the things. But devaluing what you do and treating yourself as a commodity, as you said, it's a race to the bottom. You want to bring your competition back into comparison mode and into relevancy in your market. Yeah, race them to the bottom and try to beat them on price. That is a recipe for disaster unless you have found such a unique product that you can sell, through an Amazon fulfillment center and never think about it while you're on a beach in Cabo. Most of us are not living that life, right? So yeah, it's like, I can't say that enough. And it was such an important not even lesson for me, because it was not even something I was willing to consider, to work together on this collaborative effort that was going to take hours and hours and months to put together. And he wanted the first couple of clients to have the experience for free. And I said, that's not the way business works. Not with clients that you want to build a long-term relationship
Yeah.
with.
Yeah,
Right.
totally agree.
And that's,
Totally agree.
and speaking of that, that is one of the other keys to having a business that does not die out in year one, is you are on a quest for not just the right clients, but ones that you can have a long-term relationship with, right? This is not speed dating for a quick one night stand and you're in and you're out. You're looking for, part of that sweet spot is you want to be alongside them for their journey because they're also helping you with yours. So that long-term, relationship is part of the dream for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with that sentiment. I'm constantly reminding people that on the other side of a business is just another dude or another chick. I know there's something nice way to say it, but you know what I mean.
I love
It's
it.
just another person, right? It's just
True.
another person who just wants help and support. And it doesn't matter whether you're selling into an enormous business or you're selling into a small or a micro business. There's still someone on the other side that's just sitting there saying, "I'm stuck. I need support." Or whatever else it might be. It doesn't matter whether it's broken plumbing or a consulting deal. Someone who needs support with something they can't do. And yeah, don't forget that there's a human on the other side of that screen nowadays, because that seems to be the way we
Yeah,
do it. The
absolutely.
human on the other side of that screen that you've got to relate to, and you got to work with, and you got to build a great relationship with, and you got to make happy. And it's more than just one business buying from another business. Super super important. Now, you mentioned something I think is so interesting. Earlier, you said, I'm going to get into your first hire.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have to say I've failed on plenty of times, right? So I might not be an expert in that, but I know you are, which is why I'm really, really happy we're having this conversation, because we kind of got it right, but it took us about 10 years to get that one right. But the first the first hire, which probably does happen within the first 5 years, is really make or break. So can you talk about that?
It is without question the most critical hire you will ever have. And for most business owners, it is really hard to get to that point where they are ready to share their vision and their business and their secret sauce with another person. And so I'm just sort of amping up the pressure, and I don't mean to, but it is truly important that that very first hire is done right. I think too often, and I'm guilty of this. So like, part of, as you were saying earlier, like you have to admit when you need help. I'm the first one to say, like, the reason that I'm pretty good at what I do is because I've tripped over these same things as well. I've committed these same
Yeah.
sins, right? And so I think most business owners and most entrepreneurs wait too long to hire their first person. And in a minute or so, I'm going to say you want to hire really slow. And that's going to sound, sort of a reverse of what I just said. But what I mean is you want to understand at what point it makes sense to share your dream and your business with that first employee. And then once you figure out what that is, then you want to take your time to get it right. So let me back up, because this brings in one of these other sort of directional tips, which is to work from the top down. And I don't mean top of the hierarchy. I mean from the 30,000-foot view, looking at your business down to what you want that very first hire to be all about. And so there's kind of this mantra that I use with my bigger corporate clients when we're taking them through like an organizational redesign or just some sort of strategic planning, which is strategy, structure, staffing. You need to understand what your business strategy is first. Then you need to understand to fulfill that strategy, what are the pieces that we need? What are the skill sets that we require? What are the resources that we need? What's the expertise? What are the perspectives that are required? And then if you are hiring that first person, it's where does my role end and that next person begin? And it might be a question of, what am I strong in and not? Peter Drucker, I think, said something like, lean into your strengths, not your weaknesses, right? And I wholeheartedly agree. You and I have talked about this at length in the past, the importance of not only just identifying what you are naturally talented at, but being authentic and being true to that and not trying to be something you're not. not spreading yourself too thin, not trying to be all the different aspects of your business, especially if you want it to grow and scale. And so it's really important to have your strategy kind of dialed in, then understand the structure, and then see, based on that, what are the pieces that I am missing? And what is it in one role that I could go out and hire to fulfill and to complement what I bring to the table? And it's why that upfront work of building your business from the inside out is so critical. Because before you even put pen to paper or marker to whiteboard on what your strategy is, you've got to be really dialed in on what your vision is for your business. Because especially in the beginning, your business, your brand, your values, your mission are a direct extension of you, right? They are an amplification of your personality. As long as you are the only one who does all the bits and does all the talking with the client and does all the business development and all the marketing and all the content, strategy on social and all of the, fulfillment and execution, after the client signs on with you. That's all great. You can control it. We love that because we're control freaks, right? When you get to that point where you say, I am at a critical juncture in my business, and in order to continue to build this journey the way that I want to, I have to either clone me, which we haven't figured out how to do yet, or I need to hire or offload some part of my business so I can stay true to my strengths and my core and my vision. And so all of that pre-work has to happen before you even post for a job, whether it's posting on Monster or posting on social media to your network or reaching out to some of your critical contacts and saying, go find me this person. It's really important to do that upfront work. And I want every business owner to understand how much upfront work it requires to get that right, so that they don't keep putting it off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Most first hires, I know, especially in my case, just came from a place of overwhelm. You know,
Yep.
it was like, I've got way too much work on my plate. I'm now struggling. This thing that I started is no longer as fun as it used to be, and I got to do 19 different things. I'm just going to hire someone that. I remember, if I go back to my first agency, it was just going to hire someone to manage the clients. That was it. Just going to bring someone in to manage the clients. I thought I was looking at qualifications and all this type of stuff, but I wasn't clear on what my vision really was, except for service clients with marketing retainers. That was the length that I went to. So I'm thinking that'll fucking be all right. No worries about it. Yeah, that's good
What
enough.
could possibly go
What
wrong?
could possibly go wrong? I didn't have like a mission statement. I didn't have values that I was hiring for, values that I had set outside of do a good job for the client. Like make clients happy. They keep paying their retainers. I had no idea, and so it's no wonder that my very first hire back in the agency days failed miserably, and I can't even blame them. It's my own fault, right, as a business owner, for not doing the work that's required to actually bring someone into my world and then, compensate them for that. And I was there, at first, I was there thinking, oh, I've just made a bad hire and this person sucks. It's probably not the case at all. And in fact, this person had all the accolades, but I set them up for failure because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So let me ask you now, you got to make the first hire. And maybe there's two questions I've got here, and you can choose which way you want to go. But question number one is, really, what should the first hire be? Like, is there an obvious, hey, this is probably what you should hire for first if you're at this stage of business? And number two, like, what's the mini checklist look like? Just the things that at a bare minimum, you kind of got to get right if you're going to make that first hire.
Yeah. So the bad news first, there is no one answer for everybody. There's no some people are going to hear that question and go, well, that's easy. It's a virtual assistant. That might be true. But as I have experienced, even when you say, okay, yeah, virtual assistant seems right because I can offload some of the stuff, there's so much variation in what that actually means. Like, what do you mean? Do you mean an assistant who doesn't actually live in your house but does all your personal shit? Because that's just really a remote personal assistant, and that's different,
Yeah.
right? Or is it somebody who is going to do the back office things, right? If that's true, you're going to have to give them access to your banking information, your finances, your accounting, your payroll if you're doing that. Like, that requires a really deep trust in a relationship with somebody that you may not have ever met before. So there's no easy answer to that. And even when it's, oh yeah, I already know, I just need somebody to offload like all the back office crap that I just don't have time to do. The people who say that are the people who are in the situation that you found yourself in, which is they waited too long. They waited until they were overwhelmed, and then they hired from a place of neediness rather than a place of clarity. And I speak from experience when I say that, because we all do it. We all wait too long. We let it build up because we say, well, wait a minute, I'm not making enough money yet. Remember, because I'm off track from the revenue target that I arbitrarily set because I compared myself to Mr. BMW driver, right?
Yeah.
And so now what you're saying is, in order for me to not have to do all the things in my business, I have to take some of the money that I've collected and pay it to somebody else to do some things. And I don't have the time to figure out which pieces of me I need to slice off and delegate to that person, because that sounds hard. And it is. If you don't do the upfront work of really getting done. And it's why starting at the 30,000 foot level is so important. And I would challenge everybody who's listening to this to start that visioning and then that strategy and then the what is it going to take to fulfill that strategy work far before you even remotely think that you're going to hire a first person, because it's important for you to dial that in first, right? If we don't have a clear picture of that horizon that we're trying to build toward, that playground that we want to be in, that impact we want to make on the world, that does make our competition irrelevant because we're so in our own genius zone that nobody else can do what we do the way that we do it for the people that we do it with. If we don't do that work and we don't get clear on the horizon, then our shorter term decisions, like if year 10, I don't know what my horizon is, or year 5, let's say, which is beyond just making sure the doors are still open, my year 1 decisions are going to be stupid. They're going to be based on need. They're going to be based on shiny object syndrome. They're going to be based on imposter syndrome. They're going to be based on what's the entrepreneur down the street driving and why aren't I?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it is really, really critical, which is why I say, like, start sooner than you think you're going to need to hire somebody to do that legwork, so that when it is time, you're going to know the time to hire the right person, and then you're going to know what you need. Now, a couple of things that are universal to kind of go to your other question about, like, what's the checklist? There's this mantra. So like in the beginning, when I was first kind of doing, going wide before I went deep, I was doing recruiting for a lot of companies because it was part of my background in my corporate world. It was what I knew, and it was what a lot of clients needed. They needed somebody to go out and find them talent, right? And so like you have this, so I lost my train of thought for a second. So there's this mantra that says hire slow, fire fast, right? That's great when you're a big corporate company that has enough, dare I say, fat in its workforce that they can absorb like one maybe bad hire or one mismatched, misaligned person. A business owner, a small business, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur who is hiring their very first person, they have to get it right. And if for some reason, after they go through a little bit of a checklist, which I'll come right back to, they realize that they still made the wrong decision, they've got to address that quickly. They can try to address it through some feedback, through some corrective action, and see if it's a workable relationship, or they have to part ways as quickly as possible. Because the longer you keep the wrong hire in your company, especially when it's just you and that person, the more damage they can do. Because they will either amplify your brand or dilute it. And if you ignore the problem for too long, they will destroy it. Right? So doing that visioning work, understanding your core beliefs, what it is you are trying to accomplish in this business beyond an arbitrarily assigned revenue target, understanding what it is that you want to offer to the world, what is your unique sort of value proposition, and how you believe it should be delivered by way of core values. If you have those dialed in, those become your filter against which you evaluate candidates. It's really important that, at the top of that funnel, that candidates meet some minimum qualifications in terms of the tasks you may ask them to do or the experience that they might have, or if it's any sort of marketing or business development role, then how big their, I almost said Rolodex, how big their contact list is. That would have really dated myself, but I know that you know what that is. But once you get to that, all else being equal, your shortlist has to fit through the filter of, do they align with my values, and do they complement my strengths in areas that I'm not good at? And it's why I started with, and I keep coming back to, you've got to build your business from the inside out, because if you are not deeply connected to what it is that you're trying to do through your business anyway, because it is an expression of you, you're going to hire the wrong person unless you were just incredibly lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think you're totally right about that. This hire, slow, fire, fast thing is funny because, as you said, yeah, there are businesses that can obviously wear that, but I think what you really mean by hire slow, at least if I've understood this all correctly, is just get your shit together and get your stuff in order well before you actually need to make the first hire. So when it comes time to do that, it's fine, and in my world, what I'm encouraging my clients to do is always create that playbook, and it's not because we're helping people with the hiring, but rather the documenting of the playbook helps me work out, okay, well, is this a good offer? Is it going to make sense to the client? Does it work? Is it going to do what it's meant to do? But that documentation becomes so important, because if you've got it, then it's really easy to hire someone to fill the role. So then anytime I've had to hire someone for a customer service role, which at the end of the day, like, we're all in the business of providing great customer service. It's the thing that we need to uphold the most. It's the thing that if we screw it up, that's where we lose all our money, right? It's not supporting our customers. The better my documentation has been, the easier that playbook, the easier it has been for that employee to come on board and actually get to where they need to get to, and then delight my customers, which is ultimately what I'm here for. Because if we make our customers upset, guess what? Say bye.
That's right.
That's the closing of the business. So especially this far in. So, just having that playbook is obviously important, and that's part of getting your house together. And I guess that's part of hiring slow when you're in the first 5 years. It's really just about making sure everything is in order, so when the time comes, you're ready, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when you are preparing for bringing on your first hire or your next hire, it is typically the first time that most business owners do take the time, make the time begrudgingly to document, what's been in their head, right? Because up until now, it's mostly anecdotal. It's mostly muscle memory. It's mostly, well, I do this every month. This is how I process invoices, or this is how I post content on this kind of schedule. This is how I interact with AI to take my jumble of an idea and bring it into some coherence, right? And so by documenting it, not only does it force you to sort of think linearly about the different processes that you really shouldn't be taking up your time doing anyway, it also helps you to introduce some consistency and standardization in the things behind you, in what I keep calling the back office stuff. But if that falls short, if there's inconsistency, if there's low quality, if there are errors, if customers get overlooked or pissed off, to your point, that erodes your ability to execute and delight them, to keep them as customers, to have them refer you to other business, and to actually grow and scale. So it's always the piece that people leave until the last. No one wants to take the time to write things down. No one wants to take the time to, document what they do. We live in an age where there is technology that will, record the steps that we're doing online. Anything from submitting an invoice to, posting content or whatever. There are those, them better even than I do. Like there's Loom, but there are other ones that sort of grab like the different steps you do in processes. And we have AI now that can take some of those things and translate them into an SOP, that can translate them into a table that you can translate into a checklist. So there is no longer the excuse of, I don't have the time, I don't have the tools, I don't have the know-how. And if you really don't have any of that, then what you do is you figure out what it is that you want your, let's say it's a virtual assistant, that you want your virtual assistant to take on from you. And you walk them through what it is that you do that you want them to do, and you have them document the steps. And then you have them do the process instead of you while you observe it, following their checklist. and then you bulletproof it that way and you fill in any gaps. So there are different ways to do it. If you're absolutely a technophobe, or you say, ain't got time for that, I've already got the overwhelm, I skipped all the advice that Johnny and Claire just shared with me, and I need this person yesterday, there are still ways to do that. But especially if you're gonna like lift up the tent and let them into the inner sanctum of your back office processes, you really have to make sure it's somebody that you can trust over time. And the other thing too, with the hiring slow, do not base your hiring decision on one 30-minute Zoom conversation. I don't care if it's a virtual assistant. I don't care if it's someone who's just going to post content for you. This person will either amplify or ultimately destroy your brand. And you are not going to, even if you get a great, you and I vibed from the very first 30-minute conversation we had, but I didn't start paying you as my business, coach and consultant based on that, right?
Exactly.
It took a little bit of time, not because there wasn't trust there, but we didn't know each other. And so
Exactly.
You can't make a decision based off of a 30-minute conversation, especially if you're going to let them into, sharing your business, which is so personal to you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely nailed it. And if I might share a really quick tactic just to make this bit easy, something that I've only started doing recently, and I actually, so this year I got really lucky. I got to take my kids back to the village that my dad and my grandfather grew up in Greece. We spent 3 years in Greece, 3 months in Greece, which it was 3 years, 3 months in Greece, and it was fantastic. But before I left, there was just so much shit I had to delegate and get off my plate because the time zone was going to be a little bit weird. And so what I started doing was, as I was performing tasks myself, I just turned on Loom. So there's this tool called Loom, LOOM.com. It's free for like the first X amount of videos. Can't remember how many. The paid version is cheap. It's like $10 a month. And all I started doing was literally recording the things that I was doing. Like I just start play on the recording. I have to do them anyway. And then I would hand that off to my virtual assistant and I'd say, okay, Hannah, can you document what you see in this video? And then I just proofread the document and then it could get delegated off to the team member that we were going to bring on to do that. And we wound up bringing on 2 hires as a part of my trip overseas. We were overdue for those hires anyway. But because I was doing this full well knowing that I didn't want to be training them while being on a call at 2 o'clock in the morning because the time zone was going to be weird, right? And I wanted to go and invest myself in the culture, especially for my kids that I got to spend time in as a kid, and my dad and my grandfathers grew up in. But my light's going again. But the point being, there's sensors, and these sensors suck. Like it's right here. It's right here. Okay, cool. We're back. Now this is good because when people see that this stuff happens in live, it means that I'm not an AI bot or an AI agent that's just here pretending to be real on screen.
He has legs.
I have legs. You might have seen my feet. Who knows? There's a market for that. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I could easily just hand things off to people without having to worry. And just by doing that, honestly, it cut my workload by 90%. I rarely got questions about a task. Most of the time, if my instructions were clear in the video, like the task got performed properly and I didn't have to worry a lot. And that's just, I had to do this shit anyway before I left, so I just hit play on the video.
Love
it. That was it. Recorded my screen, and that was really easy for me. So if you don't have time, reality is you do. You're probably doing the stuff anyway. Just use Loom, hit record, and just let it see what you're doing, and then get a VA for $10 an hour just to transcribe the video and write some instructions. He's busy.
So there's so many things I love about that story. First of all, that you were able to have this amazing experience of bringing your family back to Greece, or maybe for your kids the first time, but going there and being able to have 3 months there. Greece is on my bucket list. I've not been yet. But the other piece of that, as business owners, anybody in a position of leadership, whether you're in a full-time job or you're a business owner, there are certain things that keep us up at night. I go to bed tired, and then like most nights I'm wired because it's like, first thing before I jump into anything else, I've got to make sure I do this, right? There's so many things that we just sort of twist and worry about, and your ability to slow down for a beat, record something you had to get done anyway, and hand it off to somebody that you had already validated it and vetted and trusted to now take that, do what she needed to do to document it, and run with it. gave you another piece of the holy grail of business ownership, which is peace of mind. You were able to go on holiday for 3 months and not have to be up at 2 in the morning to make sure that nothing was being set on fire in the business. And it sounds like such a luxury, but it's actually such a necessity, because I think, the other part, if I had like one sort of closing tip that cinches up all of this, which you just teed up so nicely, is the importance of slowing down to speed up. I counsel and advise and collaborate with executives in startup companies, in small businesses, in global organizations, and everything in between. And all of them struggle with the same thing. It's go, go, go. I have to have a jam-packed meeting calendar. I can't possibly actually take 2 weeks off for vacation, but even if I do, I have my laptop, I have my work phone, I have my home phone, I have my tablet, right? And it's the constant hustle and grind that actually gets in the way of you growing and scaling and nurturing your business in a way that you still love. You talk to some business owners who don't do that and don't slow down to speed up, and they are beaten down. Even the ones who have somehow made it to that magical 5-year milestone or the 10-year or the 15, because they never give themselves that reset. They don't give themselves that permission to slow down, to clear their calendar, and to go back to that 30,000-foot vista and say, am I still tracking on the right path toward that horizon that I said was so important to me in my business journey? And so that mantra of slow down to speed up, I use with every client of every size, of every tenure, ones that are brand new leaders, ones that are in their final chapter before they retire. And it is something that we hold on to, and that my husband now as my business partner and I make sure that we do. Between Christmas and New Year's, we took a couple of days. We went down the coast and just sort of, tucked ourselves away from like the chore of the house and like the grind. And we reevaluated where we want to be by the end of this year and where we want to be longer term. And are we still in sync? And are we still aligned between the two of us? As a solopreneur up until then, it was me doing that work. Sure, he was a sounding board, but really making sure I was still in alignment with what I said I wanted my business to be all about. And some of your business owners who have been doing this for a while actually don't want to hear that part, because they're realizing right now that it's been a while since they did that soul searching. And they're afraid, as they're listening to this in their Beamer that they're paying too much for, that they got away from their core belief. And I'm not suggesting you have to go turn in the Beamer. If that's really what revs you up, no pun intended, then by all means, figure out a way for you to get to a place in your business by doing the hard work and the soul searching, so that the car payment every month is not even a thought in your mind, right? If that is part of what defines you or what makes you happy, power to you. But make sure that that is not, how many times have you driven past a house that is falling apart, but they have a shiny Beamer in the backyard, or they
Seen
have,
it.
right, like some vintage Corvette in the driveway, but their house is like a shitbox, excuse me. But I mean, those are choices, and that's fine. And if you've been intentional about those choices, because that is dialed in and in alignment with the life you want to live and the playground you want to build for yourself and for the people who matter to you, then that's cool. But if it's not, then this is a little bit of like tough love from Johnny and me to you guys. Like, do the work, slow down to speed up, and it's going to pay dividends far into the future.
Totally, totally agree. Well, an hour in, this has been good. This has been a fun conversation. Hopefully not too much tough love, but definitely where I wanted to get to. You've exhausted all of my questions and what I wanted. So I just want to say thank you. Obviously, it's really cool that we could kick things off in this podcast with an Amazon bestseller as well, by the way. You can find her books on Amazon. Look up Claire Chandler, the founder and president of Talonboost. Claire, if you had one final point, one way to wrap this up, what's one quick piece of advice or one action step that someone could take right now, immediately?
I was talking to a client earlier today, and she said, "This is the year I'm going to stop hiding from what's hard, and I'm going to do the hard." And I would say to all your business, every business owner, there are parts of this journey that are hard. There are parts that we have been putting off. It's like the exercise when, you're sitting in your summer months. I'm deep into the winter months here in New Jersey. It's hard to go out and do that exercising, but it is so critical to your own mental health and well-being. The things that are standing in the way between your where you are today and your future success are often the things that you are telling yourself are too hard. If they are mission critical to you getting to that horizon, do what is hard.
I love it. I love it. I have a phrase that I ripped off my business partner, James, who ripped it off someone else, who probably ripped it off someone else. And that is, you just got to get in the office and eat the frog, right?
Yes,
No one
eat the
wants to eat the
frog.
frog.
Love it.
I don't even know where it comes from, but it's been thrown around and I stole from him, he stole from someone else. But eat the frog, right? Get in, eat the frog, do the hard work. Because as Arnie says, hard work pays off. I don't know if he actually says that, but I felt like that was a good way to finish. So on that note, Claire, thank you so much for joining me. Last point I'd like you to throw out there. If anyone wants to work with Claire, how can they find you? Where should they go? URL, email, give us something.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 3 different websites to go hit. Growthonpurpose.com is where you can find my book, and you can take a quick business scorecard to see how you are tracking on your growth journey.
Love it.
ClaireChandler.net is my personal branded website, and then my business website is Talonboost.net. Come visit.
Perfect. Claire, thanks so much for hanging out with me.
Thank you. It was so great to do this. I'm so glad you invited me to share your stage. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love it. See you, Claire.
See ya.